We're going to start with introductions. I have two of our fellow middle school teachers here with me. I'm representing the high school as well here today, but they're going to also talk about maintenance of their portion, specific middle school implementation using Redbird simulators. They've been a great partner in getting this rolling at the middle school level and the high school level. So we'll do that. We're also going to do a quick review of Collierville, Tennessee, which is a suburb of Memphis. And so we'll talk a little bit about our town and kind of some rationale for why we decided to start an aviation program and how we received the funding to do that, because it is quite expensive. And so we'll review that. And then they'll talk about their curriculum for the middle school. We have some videos in here of our students actually using the machines and how they're using them in class. And they'll talk about specific skills and things that they're teaching kids to do on the machines via the curriculum that we've already been using in our STEM program. And then Redbird implementation, that needs the middle school as well as the high school, and I'll cover that part. And then also community partnerships, which has been critical as we've gone through and implemented this program both at the middle and high school level. Yep, so that's me. Background, I have 14 years of public education. I'm a former assistant principal at our high school. I do not have a CTE background, so I've had a lot to learn over the last 4 years, and specifically this last year with aviation. Previous to that, I was a social studies teacher at a legacy Shelby County school, coach before that. But I'm going to hand it over and let my colleagues introduce themselves.
I'm Anna Yarbrough. I teach STEM 8th grade at West Collierville Middle. I've had 14 years in education, mostly in middle school. Did teach music my first year, we're not going to talk about that. I taught STEM for 5 years, all in 8th grade. We do 2 different modules, but the one that we're going to focus on today is the flight and space module.
I'm Madron Water. I taught 7 years, elementary and middle school. These past 2 years, I've taught staff flight and space and had the opportunity to teach students these records.
All right, so we're going to bounce it back and forth a little bit here. So, anybody ever heard of Collierville, Tennessee? All right, so I know some Tennessee friends are over here, so I'm glad y'all recognize the name. Well, we are a suburb of Memphis, Tennessee, southeast of Memphis. About 51,000 latest census, that's what it said, how many people it says live in our town. We do have a lot of industry, obviously in Memphis, but locally, we have a lot of FedEx regional facilities all throughout Collierville, but specifically to aviation, a lot of FedEx pilots live in our town. Obviously, they work out of Memphis. Memphis is a huge hub, one of the most central locations in the U.S., which is why FedEx is there. But a lot of pilots not only live in the town, but their kids go to our schools. And so there's a lot of interest in aviation, which kind of was the motivation to start an aviation program. But we also have some other manufacturing facilities. So Collierville is a very unique town, and I live there. I have 3 kids. My wife's a teacher in Collierville schools as well, so we absolutely love it. All right, so a little bit about our school district. So we have 10 total schools. I'm not going to get into the politics, really, but the Shelby County schools, which is where Memphis is located in Shelby County, there were essentially 2 school systems. There was Memphis City Schools, which were all the schools that were essentially inside the city limits of Memphis. And then there were also Shelby County schools, which were all those schools that were in the suburbs outside of Memphis that were all part of one school district. Well, back in 2011 rather, the 2 districts combined for a variety of reasons, and then again separated, and then each legacy Shelby County school formed their own school system. So Bartlett is another suburb of Memphis. They have their own school system. Germantown's a suburb of Memphis. They have their own. So we are one of those that separated and formed our own school district back in 2013, which is why the year is not that long ago. So we are coming up on 10 years as our own school system. We do have 1 high school. It is the largest high school in Tennessee with just under 3,000 students. There are other schools that would likely be larger if they did not have a 9th grade academy, but we do not. All of our students are under one roof, and so we are, by definition, the largest high school in terms of population in Tennessee. 2 middle schools, which are represented here. We have West Collierville Middle School, which is one of the larger middle schools in Tennessee, and then we also have Collierville Middle School. And vastly different dynamics. They are about double the size of our other middle school, Collierville Middle School, which is about half the size, obviously, of West. We also have 6 elementary schools that feed into those 2 and then ultimately to the high school. The slogan when all this came about was one town, one school, everyone a dragon, with the Collierville Dragons. So all these then feed into the high school. And as a result of COVID, we do have one virtual school. It is changing its structure a lot next year, but we do have a virtual school as well. We have over 9,000 students that are served, roughly a third of those again at the high school, largest high school in Tennessee. We do anticipate about 3,000 next year because we're really closer to 2,900 at the end of the school year. It'll be that way, and we anticipate about 3,000, which is capacity at our high school. So the high school, you're looking at it here in the middle, is essentially brand new. This is year 5 and it's been open. CTE was a huge focus when they built the high school. We have 19, small plug for CTE, but we have 19 different programs to study, including welding, nursing, automotive, and all of that is under one roof. Students don't have to leave to go to these places to get that experience or that dual enrollment like we just heard in the previous session. We are a one-to-one district, so that online option for dual enrollment that was talked about before, we really take advantage of that with the University of Memphis. We have something called Dragons Distance Learning where all of our students, and I wasn't going to talk about this, but it lines up great with the previous session. In Dragons Distance Learning, we have a clerical, kind of an assistant that serves as the teacher of record, but students are taking any number of online classes in an asynchronous manner online through the University of Memphis, and that includes our aviation classes. So it really gives us a lot of flexibility, not having to provide that instructor, and also being able to offer more dual enrollment because students are accessing it in an asynchronous manner. But that would not be possible if we weren't one-to-one at the high school. So MacBooks at the high school, iPads at the middle school, and then also, I think, down to 3rd grade. Every kid has an iPad in elementary, but they can take them home starting in 3rd grade. All right, so where did the money for aviation come from? So back in 2021, our district was awarded one of the 26 districts in the state of Tennessee received the Innovative High School Models Grant. It was a competitive grant. Students or districts from around the state wrote these grants for a variety of reasons. Shelby County Schools also received a grant. They chose to do ag as their focus for that grant. All of it's related essentially to CTE and workforce development. But we chose to start an aviation program. It says 21 districts, that should say. Actually, I think 21 is the right number. I think I used to say 26, but 21 I think is the right number. $2 million grant is the amount that we received, and it covers the cost of equipment, training, and certification exams and flight hours for students to go through an aviation program. Because I didn't know how much time we would have, I didn't put a whole lot in here about this, but we do also have a aviation maintenance program partnered with the local community college. We were told we only had 25 minutes, so I just kind of excluded that. Thought I would talk about it if we have more time, but it looks like we will have a little bit more. But essentially, students can complete their general certificate on our campus and then take that and matriculate to what we call the TCAT, Tennessee College of Applied Technology, towards their A&P license there. So that's also part of the grant as well. We started in last school year, 21-22, by implementing these programs at the middle school level. And then we started this year by implementing it at the high school level using Redbird simulators, AOPA curriculum, which we'll get into in just a little bit. But our goal, this whole pathway, the whole purpose is so that students can earn their private pilot's license and all the FAA exams and certifications that go along with it prior to graduating high school and not having to pay for it at all. And so far, we're achieving that. We're really excited about what we've been able to do this year and really looking forward to what's coming as a result of us laying the groundwork these last couple of years and with great instructors like the ones that I have behind me. So the timeline, just to quickly go through this, we got the grant in spring of 21. In summer of 21 is when we bought J Velocity Redbird simulators, and we're going to go through this in detail here in just a minute. But we created 2 flight labs at our middle school, so both middle schools have a dedicated space for flight labs. There are 10 J Velocity simulators in each of those, so we have 20 total at both middle schools. And those are implemented through our STEM curriculum that already existed called Project Lead the Way. You may be familiar with it. So in fall of 21, I know Greg Burlock's not here, but he has been fantastic to us. He is who asked us to present today, so we're really grateful to be here to share kind of our story and kind of how we got started. And we by no means, again, think that this is a perfect model. We are still working on this, and I've talked with some people getting some feedback about whether or not what we're doing is right or not. But this is just kind of what some bumps in the road that we've had and kind of worked through over the last couple of years. But Greg that came down in the fall, actually it may have been summer, late summer, fall of 21, and provided a one-day really intensive training just on what aviation is, because again, we are not aviators. Nobody in our middle school, nobody in our high school at that point were aviators. So he was teaching them about, he kind of taught them about the science of flight and aerospace in day one, and then came back the second day and focused more on using the sims and implementing them into the Project Lead the Way curriculum. So he's been fantastic with that. We can't thank him enough for the work that he's done in helping us get this off the ground. So that was last year. And you're going to hear from them directly how they implemented this over the last year and a half in their classrooms. But in spring of 2022, we implemented at the high school. We were planning on implementation for 22-23. So last year, around this time, we purchased 4 Redbird TD2 Horizon simulators at the high school to be part of brand new courses that we had never offered. So we were not only dropping in new simulators, we dropped in new courses as well. And the courses that we're offering this year are Introduction to Aerospace, and then dual enrollment courses as well. Dual enrollment Aviation 1700 to the University of Memphis and Aviation 1800 to the University of Memphis. And then we're also doing a work-based learning period for our students to go and fly during the day at our partner flight school, which I'll cover more later. So that's 22-23, kind of how we got started this year. And again, we installed the flight lab at the high school, and it's a temporary space. We have new construction coming at our high school already, even though it's only 5 years old, to create a new space for a permanent flight lab that will house 14 Redbird TD2s and then 2 FMXs as well. And I have the blueprints I'll show you for what that's going to look like coming fall of 24. Yeah, that's good. So partnerships, like I said, are critical in this, and this didn't happen after we wrote the grant. This was all in the works while the grant was written. Full disclosure, I did not write the grant, kind of inherited it, so I do work closely with it, obviously, in implementing programs, but our chief academic officer did write the grant. In that process, she worked closely with a lot of different partners, both post-secondary and industry. FedEx has been fantastic. Not necessarily in terms of, we're not asking for money at this point because we do have the money, but we're hoping, obviously, there is some monetary piece to this moving forward to help with sustainability of the program. But in terms of coming in to be guest speakers, coming in to just be present, to talk with our teachers, to show them some things in the simulators that otherwise they wouldn't know, they have been fantastic. We've had multiple meetings with them on how they can be supportive moving forward with instructors and with time and with volunteering and career days and things like that, and they have been awesome. I mentioned University of Memphis. They are a dual enrollment partner for flight. TCAP Memphis is Tennessee College of Applied Technology. They're our dual enrollment partner for the A&P program, the Aviation Maintenance program. CTI, Professional Flight Training. There's also people with some CTI shirts on earlier, because I know they're based in Florida too, but CTI Flight School, which operates out of a local airport about 35 minutes north of where we are, in Collierville, in Millington, Tennessee. This is the University of Memphis partners with them as well. But this is where our students actually earn their flight hours that we pay for them to access. So they serve as our airport where students will actually get flight time during the school day. And then Project Lead the Way is the current curriculum that we're using in the middle schools, and I think that leads us into y'all's curriculum.
Okay, so in middle school, we use Project Lead the Way curriculum in our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classes. Each grade does 2 modules. Currently, we have anywhere from, or typically, I guess, a year, 6 to 9 teachers in my building that are classified as STEM teachers. We have a population of about 1,500 kids in 3rd grades. So in an average year, I would say about 300 kids are enrolled in STEM. In 8th grade, we do flight and space and science and tech. And over the last 2 years, we've had the luxury of incorporating flight simulators, 10 flight simulators. So our kids go an average of 2 times a week in my building, just because I'm sharing those flight simulators with 3 other teachers. So you gotta kind of work on the schedule. Some of the concepts that we teach in the flight and space curriculum to our 8th graders is we start off with parts of a plane, the function of those parts, what do they actually do, why are they there, 4 forces of flight, pitch roll and yaw, basic plane parts and their functions as used by aircraft, and flight planning. So we start off building paper airplanes, we do kites, we do hot air balloons, all incorporating the 4 forces of flight. Once our students have an introduction to the parts of the plane, and we have to actually sit down and explain the simulator parts to them also, and we actually try to even get them on there while we're doing the other module. To begin with the flight space foundations, they have to develop an understanding of pitch, roll, and yaw, the 4 forces of flight, weight, lift, drag, and thrust, parts of a plane. What is the nose? What is the horizontal stabilizer? And then we move into the simulators. What part of the simulator affects the nose? How do I move the nose? Well, that would be the yoke. What about the flaps? What do those do? How do they affect lift and drag and thrust and force? Rudders. We have to just go through all the parts with them. This is what this is. Please be gentle with it. They are 8th graders. The very first thing we do the very first day in my class is I push the yoke all the way in. I'm crashing. I know. Crash. And they're like, oh, there's no parts or body parts. I'm like, no. Don't crash on purpose. So we have to kind of take the gaming element out of it really quickly. And then they really kind of get into it. And my classes they're mixed, they're boys and girls. We have I think we have 27 different dialects in my school. So it's every population from every country, and they're all in the simulators. And the ones you think would be amazing, sometimes they're not. The ones you think are the quiet little girls are probably some of your best flyers. So. I'm going to turn it over, and you can talk about the intermediate.
All right, so once they know how a plane works, how the simulators works, and what the parts do, and what controls those parts, now it's time to apply their knowledge. Using this pretty cool technology, Again, this was all new to me, and when the kids saw this was all new to them as well. So, it's very intimidating at first, but it makes sense. You start teaching them, okay, the blue is the sky, the white line is the horizon, the brown is the ground. And teach them about the elevation, the speed, knots, what does the word knots mean. That's all new. So it's a lot to take in, but applying it is the step we go into. Again, utilizing the instruments on the G1000. And landmarks. PLTW, Project Getaway, is what we use in 8th grade for flight and space curriculum. And we learn about landmarks. What are they? Forests, lakes, rivers, all that. And apply that when they're flying. Maps. We learn about maps. Which way is north, which way is west, south, east. Can they find their house? Can they find the school? Can they find, when they live in Memphis, can they find the pyramid in Memphis or the Memphis Bridge, the Mississippi River? And luckily, Bedford has these explored missions. You have to land on the center line, stay on there, taxi, all that, and maintain elevation, maintain speed. It's pretty cool. Now, for those real advanced kids who got it down under the belt, want a challenge, this takes a couple of weeks, maybe months. It's not for those real life scenarios. It's that. Tell them to find the pyramid and the bridge. We do a contest. Okay, right now you're a photographer, and you got to get a nice image of both Memphis Bridge and Memphis pyramid and the river. Landing on it. An aircraft carrier. Pretty hard task to do. If you're interested, it's if you go to San Francisco, right near the Golden Gate Bridge is an aircraft carrier. You can land on it. Took me a many times to do, but it can be done. And some kids, that's easy for them. Oh, it's too easy, Mr. Wade. Give me something else. All right, let's put some snow on there. Let's put some wind. It's nighttime. You can always challenge it, and it's pretty fun. And the last thing that we're on right now, actually, is Miracle on the Hudson. We do read about Captain Sullenberger and how he landed in the Hudson. So was that the right decision for him to make? Because that was a lawsuit and all that kind of stuff was in trial. So you could actually do that, mimic it. I put 3,300 feet in the air, Wind is 9 nautical miles. I don't know too much about, again, aviation, but you know, I take what I do know and apply it over there. It's given a challenge. Where you're gonna land? You're gonna land in LaGuardia, you're gonna land in Peterborough. Can you make that landing? Nope. So far, nobody has passed that challenge. So it's pretty cool. I think we got a video.
Yeah, so this is just a video of the kids using the simulators, and this was filmed just a few weeks ago. So this is what's happening right now in the flight windows.
It's very fun.
After what?
Don't worry, we yell one hand all the time, I promise you. There's one thing I forgot to point out. As you said before, we're educators. We have no aviation training other than what Redbird has provided us. So with our simulators, there are built-in lessons that have an introductory video that instruct the kids, and sometimes the professors when you're really new, as to how to do the task that's being presented to you. And then there are prompts that get them to fly through green gates. It's a training module that will truly score them at the end. So as an educator, very little flight experience, those videos are essential to making a productive classroom so the kids actually know what they're going to do. What we usually do is we usually watch them as a class, sometimes 2 or 3 times, pause, stop, and talk. And then like, okay, now I'm going to watch you again on your own. So we have 10 videos playing at once, but that doesn't seem to bother 8th graders at all. And then they start flying on their own. And they know that if they're struggling, they can always go back and rewatch that video to get instructions or pointers. Oh, what elevation did it say? What am I supposed to be doing with my right foot? So I forgot to mention that those are in there.
Right, so that was kind of our middle school program and how we implemented it, again, starting with 21-22, so they're in year 2 of using those in the Project Lead the Way curriculum. So I'm representing the high school as well here in this capacity, talking about the pathway that we have at the high school and what's happening right now. So this is year 1, so just kind of give you some background here. This year, we started with only offering the Introduction to Aerospace class, which you see on the left. We did not offer the 1 and 2 classes because we wanted to go ahead and give as many students a chance that wanted to take that Introduction to Aerospace class, and then we will be offering those 2 classes next year. And with that, the Aviation 1 and 2 classes, they have to pick those at the same time because we are on a block schedule. So all of our classes are roughly 90 minutes, usually 87. And so students can actually finish a course in a semester as opposed to a year. So that allows them to be able to take stuff like Aviation 1 and 2, which are kind of coupled together all within one school year. So students will have to do an application for all those that completed the Introduction to Aerospace class this year. These are standard level Department of Education offered courses. They will have to do an application in order to move on to 1 and 2. And again, I know there's been a lot of talk about removing barriers, and we totally agree with that. But the reality is, from a district side, you only have so many instructors, you only have so many seats available, and we also want to make sure that we're being intentional with giving students the opportunity that really need this and couldn't afford it otherwise. And so the application piece, part of that is looking about whether or not a student is free reduced lunch, whether they're female, whether they're a minority student. Those are all things that will go into that application, that screening process. So we use the AOPA curriculum for our 9th, and I say 9th and 10th because those are the grade levels we allow to take that course. There's essentially a 3 or 4 year pathway. We're still working on what that looks like. So just kind of know that the ideal path would be 9th grade, introduction class, 10th grade, aviation 1 and 2, fall and spring. And then at the end, they would do an application to move on there. Then at the end of their aviation 2 class, spring of their sophomore year, they would sit for the ground school written exam at our partner flight school, which is obviously an FAA PSI testing site. So they can take it there. Again, the grant is paying for the students that get to that point to take that certification, and then those that pass will move on to the next level, which is dual enrollment. And so that's when our dual enrollment classes start. Again, we did start this year because we did have so much interest, and we had a lot of kids whose parents were pilots, and so they wanted to go ahead and get started when they heard the funds were available. So we went ahead and started some dual enrollment options this year. We only offered these 2 courses this year in fall and spring respectively, but under a full pathway, those students would complete intro, do the application, complete 1 and 2. Those who pass the written test would move on to taking aviation 1700 and 1800 as juniors, fall and spring respectively. Those who pass that and move on to their senior year would enroll in aviation 2100, which is an aerodynamics course, and then also would have access to the flight hours that are paid for by the district through the grant for up to 50 flight hours for students to earn their check ride towards their private pilot's license. And we actually facilitate that during the school day through a work-based learning period at the end of the day. So 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we're 7:30 to 2:30. And you're going to see this in the video in just a second, but students are actually leaving campus right now. At 1 o'clock, they're heading to Billington. They get there around 1:45, and then they're usually in the air by about 2:15. So they are technically flying, not having to pay for it, on our dime during the school day in Millington during their senior year. So it's a pretty cool opportunity, which again would not be possible without our partnerships and without the funding that we have through the grant. All right, so speaking of partnerships, CTI Flight School, again, is who we're using for this, and they partner with U of M, so it kind of de facto defaults to us to have to partner with them, but they've been great. We estimate about 40 students will be able to access 50 flight hours towards their private pilot's license. So if you say that's about 5 to 8 kids a year, you're talking about a few years where we can keep this going and it can be sustainable just with the grant. The ISM's also, the grant, when I say ISM, I'm talking about the grant that we're using to pay for this. It's going to pay for the ground school written test as well for those students. It pays for the final flight check towards their private pilot's license. And then we also give them a work-based learning period, which they have to apply for to be able to access those hours during the school day. So that's essentially the pathway and how it's paid for and how we're facilitating it. And the work-based learning period is regulated by the Department of Education. It is a credit-bearing class. And they actually just changed, which I think you guys know, they just changed the whole work-based learning structure where every program of study in CTE has their own practicum course. There just used to be a general work-based learning course. Some programs had their own practicum course, but now every program has their own. So they would actually enroll in an aviation practicum course the spring of their senior year, and that's where they would access these flight hours. And so ultimately, students complete all coursework and the FAA assessments, flight time will be able to earn their private pilot's license at no cost prior to them graduating high school. So that's how we are implementing it so far. We do anticipate at least 1, if not 2. We have a total of 4 that are doing their flight hours this semester right now. We anticipate at least 1, probably 2, could be more, just depends on how hard they work between now and graduation, which is just a few weeks away, which is crazy to think about. That could earn their private pilot's license by the time they graduate. And so this is just a video of our kids using the Redbird TD2s in the flight lab at the high school. I'm not the instructor, so I really can't give you specifics on what they're doing. But you guys, those that are in aviation, would probably be able to recognize that.
It's very similar to ours, they just have more monitors. Their controls are a little more upscale. We don't have that.
So like I said, we have 4 Redbird TD2s that we put in our flight lab. 2 of them are glass and 2 are analog. So kids are getting experience on both. So this is one of our students, Dylan, in work-based learning, out at the CTI airport. He's about to go and do, I forget, he's just going to go out and get some of those hours. I think he's up in the air for 2 hours scheduled for this flight. But yeah, we went out there, we said, hey, we're going to go come check you out and see you fly. And so he's actually, this is happening during school time just a couple weeks ago. So he's flying during the school day.
No pressure.
And he is with the flight instructor, so it's not by himself. And obviously weather dictates how many hours they can get a week, but they do try to get out there really as often as they can because they know they only have those hours until they graduate. And he did land the plane, I was told. All right, so what's coming? So we're not stopping with what we're doing now. The district is matching the investment that the Innovative High School Models Grant has put into this program. And the way we're going to match that is we're actually going to add on a whole new piece of one of the wings in the back of our building. Our Board of Education approved an expansion already. Like I said, we're going to be at 3,000 students next year, likely. That is at capacity, so an expansion was already in the works. But we were able to convince them that this is a worthy cause to continue to invest in. And so they're actually going to take that expansion and create a brand new space for both our maintenance program and our flight program. So if you were looking at this, I had to break it up so it would fit on this slide. Essentially, there's going to be an aviation classroom that's going to be shared among both maintenance and flight. It's actually going to connect directly to the maintenance lab, so you can see the workbenches and the tables in the maintenance area there. And then behind that is going to be the flight lab, and you can tell there's room for 14 TD2s, which we've already purchased. Thank you, Alex, for helping us out with that. They're going to be in storage until we get this space built, which should open in fall 24. And then in the rear, again, already purchased, will be two FMX, it says RMX, that's a typo, FMX simulators that we'll have in the back of the flight lab. And then kind of a middle space where instruction can take place on a whiteboard. You see the teaching wall at the front. So this is all going to happen. And it's going to be pretty unrivaled, at least in West Tennessee. There's not going to be anything like this in a high school in West Tennessee, in a public high school. Let's see, I think I covered all this. So other things that we're going to be looking at adding, also the FAA Part 107 drone certification. We're working with CTI on offering that. I do know that Tennessee, much like Florida, if you were here in the last session, does have an unmanned aircraft course, that it's its own course code. So we're looking at adding that. I think our friends in Cumberland are already doing that, so we're trying to figure out how we can implement that. That's kind of been put on the back burner because this has been quite the undertaking, but that'll be the next step in expanding this into UAS. Increased partnerships with other flight schools, possibly looking at additional dual enrollment agreements. In my opinion, you can't have too many of them because it gives more opportunities for kids. So we want to have as many of those as we can. We're also looking at becoming an FAA-approved site. We're in the queue. I'm not sure where we're at with that. As we heard earlier, they moved pretty slowly, so that was confirmation of why I haven't heard anything. So we are in the queue. We're working on that, and that will help with testing. We could become a testing site. We could do everything under one roof with this program, like we do with others. Outside of being an airport, that's probably not possible, but so we're working on that. And then sustainability is going to be the goal moving forward. So some things we've already done for sustainability: all the equipment is purchased, the lab space is coming. All of the teaching positions associated with this at the high school have been moved into the general fund, so they're no longer paid out of the grant. So the only thing that we would be looking for sustainability would be flight hours, continuing to be able to provide that for kids that otherwise wouldn't be able to afford it. But outside of that, everything is going to be sustainable moving forward. The space is going to happen. The equipment's there. It's just finding instructors. Talked about that earlier. Finding somebody who has the credentials to teach the standard level courses in Tennessee. They have to have a specific endorsement. Some of that's a policy issue in our state, but working on trying to find not just an instructor, but a good instructor. Just like with any of our programs, it all hinges on the quality of our teachers. They are the driving force behind whether or not a program is going to be successful. I can buy all the stuff in the world, but if we don't have anybody in there that can break it down in a manner that is understood by 14-year-olds up to 18-year-olds, then it doesn't really make much of a difference. So we want to make sure that we're finding not just an instructor, but the right instructors for the program moving forward. And so these are, if you scan these, you'll get all of our contact information. You can see the names above them so you know who it goes to. I do have business cards, but this is just an easier way to get this information out. So if you do want to scan those, you should pull up the page and show all the contact information for all three of us. So that's really all we have. We'd love to, and then we have this time. I know they said till 5 o'clock. We are not staying till 5 o'clock. But if you have any questions, we'd be happy. If it's specific to middle school, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them. High school or programmatic stuff, I'm happy to answer them if you have any questions. Yes, sir.
I have several questions. So we have a STEM-based foundation with an FMX simulator. We've had very slow uptake by the high schools. Interestingly, the CTEs were much, the career technical centers, much more interested in taking these things up. And we had a lot of pushback from the high schools in terms of adopting the AOPA curriculum, which somewhat surprised us. Maybe we were a bit naive about it. I'm a flight instructor, retired physician. I am not an educator. I've surrounded myself with people like you who are trying to get me up to speed.
Yeah.
But a couple of questions about your funding. The funding, your grant funding, was that from the State Department of Education?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a competitive grant that they put out for others to apply for, which I'm sure came in some form of federal money. Through, I think it came through ESSA, honestly, is where it all came from, and then they facilitated some of that through their version of it, which they call the Innovative High School Models Grant. So it was from the Tennessee Department of Ed.
I would rate your program as wildly successful. Have there been other programs in Tennessee who followed your model?
Well, they didn't follow us. We just did it at the same time, but Cumberland, right over here, they're doing the same thing we're doing.
Well, you know, imitation is the best form of flattery.
Well, we were doing it at the same time. We didn't know it until today.
And there was another, your construction funding. Where does that money come from?
That is, I believe, also federal. That's a local decision. That's our Board of Education that decided on that, but I believe that's federal funding for ESSA.
And do you think, I was at the high school symposium in Memphis last
Our high school instructors were there.
Yeah, and we got a tour of the FedEx facility. Do you think, and I don't want to minimize your spectacular achievement, but do you think some of your success is directly attributable to the fact that FedEx is in town? Because you have kids who are children of FedEx pilots, and you've got a community that's heavily employed by FedEx. Is that one of the reasons you think you got buy-in in an aviation focus, or was it just your spectacular educational ability?
Oh, no. FedEx had a huge motivation for the idea. In terms of, they give a lot of time, they give a lot of advice, they give a lot of the intangibles to us on a regular basis. And we've been working with FedEx for a long time, but they've never been this involved. They're not donating money. They're not donating equipment. Actually, they are. They're going to donate some maintenance equipment to us. We got that the other day, so they are going to do that. But yeah, the fact that FedEx pilots are all over our town, a lot of their kids go to our schools, that was a huge piece of it. But I also think that, so I didn't really go into the background of our district. We are a high-achieving school district for the most part. We usually rank pretty highly in terms of the report card for the state, based on state testing and ACT scores and all that. But we also have a segment of our population, which kind of a lot of people that aren't when you think of Collierville around the Memphis area, kind of see it as affluent, not really having any problems, don't really have a subset of a population that has a ton of needs, but we do. It's actually what makes us different from a neighboring suburb named Germantown. Germantown is kind of like we are, but they don't have that subset diverse population that we do, which you kind of saw in the videos. So we do have a lot of kids with needs, and so I think the motivation of realizing that we do have that population of kid that probably would not be able to do this if we didn't offer it, but also having FedEx in our backyard clearly has a huge impact. But
we have an 8th grade career day every year, and I would say at least a third of our presenters are from FedEx. They are not all from FedEx Aviation. So we had one that was FedEx Hospitality, but FedEx is very much in middle schoolers, 8th graders.
We're
They see FedEx
in
everywhere.
rural south central Pennsylvania. We are not blessed with FedEx. We have a bunch of farmers.
yeah.
You have any advice for us? If we've got a FedEx type partner, is how we could,
You can definitely do it without a FedEx type partner, but you definitely would want to, because she mentioned the career days. One of the things that we do at our career days is we align our offerings for our people that come and participate based on student interest. And so if the interest is there and you have the funding to do it, like I think was talked about in the previous session, there are tons of funding opportunities out there. I just did a request for one the other day. I think you and I were talking about it earlier. There's tons of money out there to start aviation programs. It's kind of like Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. And aviation is just one of those where kids are going to gravitate towards it. to the tune where we are actually, currently have 2 postings. We have 2 instructor postings for flight. One to replace our instructor who is not returning next year, and we're adding a position as well. And so that just shows you the demand is through the roof. And not all those kids are FedEx pilots kids either.
And do you have aviation type career days where you tell kids that, well, pilots aren't the only part of aviation we need. We need mechanics, we need air traffic controllers, we need airport managers. Do you introduce them to careers other than pilot?
Yeah, in our career days that we do for all of our 8th grade kids at both schools separately, FedEx comes in and they bring an aviation team. They bring a maintenance, avionics, I believe we've done air traffic control as well, not through FAA, but somebody who has experience.
On the mini conveyor belt one day.
Yeah.
To show robotics.
Yeah, at the hub, moving items through the hub. So yeah, they bring a whole team to show all the different fields that are available. And the courses that we teach at the high school level introduce students to that as well in 9th grade.
And one last question.
Yeah.
Your 9 through 12 curriculum, is that AOPA curriculum, or is that your own design curriculum?
So AOPA is all of our standard courses, so the Introduction to Aerospace class, and then the Aviation 1 and 2, and then the University of Memphis provides the curriculum for the dual enrollment for 11th and 12th grade.
And what was the hook for the university? How did you get them?
We already had multiple agreements with them for different programs, like I talked about our Dragon's Distance Learning with all the different dual enrollment options. So we already had a great relationship with them, and then they added a flight program about 4 years ago. And so kind of a mutual partnership.
Our high school has a culinary department that's dual enrollment, with universities.
Yeah.
For example.
University, last question.
Yeah.
University of Memphis, do they have aeronautical engineering degrees or other aviation-based academic programs in the university?
I believe so, but if you do a quick Google search, you can probably, because I don't work for them, but their private pilot's license pathway is what we are offering, the beginning portions of that on our campus. Yeah.
Sorry, I was at Breakout.
Oh, great.
We work for downsized students.
Oh, okay.
Large school district would have to be very different, but very well done. Definitely something we are trying to figure out what we're going to do next. Our program is 2 years old. Year and a half ago. So
Yeah.
we just started this month.
We're both first year teachers.
Yeah.
Are so y'all are instructors?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
For high school?
For high school, yes. One is are your high school instructors having any issues with AOPA curriculum?
A little bit.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then second, are your high school teachers certified flight instructors?
No.
Okay.
The way Tennessee works is you have to have a specific occupational license endorsement to teach the standard level courses. That usually for aviation, it's a ground school endorsement, which is 774, and you have to have, which we looked at earlier, you have to have private pilot's license credential, but then so many years of experience within the last 10, something like that. Not only that, once you meet that background, you also have to go back to school for more hours in order to get that occupational license issued. So it's usually 4 courses. But essentially what it would look like, let's say you came in, you had your private pilot's license, or you had you were CFI, you retired from FedEx. If you had all that, we could hire you on a waiver for a year, which is what we did here. But then after that waiver is over, you'd have to go back to school to learn how to be a teacher, basically, through a teacher prep program. And then while you're in school, you have to do that in your first year. You have to enroll in a program in your first year, and then you have to complete it within 3. So that's state law right now, and it has created a lot of barriers. Retired FedEx pilots don't want to work full-time, and then anybody younger is trying to work on their commercial rating, so they're trying to get instruction hours, and we're not doing it in an airplane. So we're working with CTI to see if we can partner with them, where maybe some of their flight instructors could also come and serve as one of our instructors, but that doesn't solve the endorsement issue, it doesn't solve the license issue. Where it may actually, we're working with a local community college as a private pilot's license program, because I know a lot of the airlines have shifted away from having a 4-year degree, now you can have a 2-year degree. And what we're trying to get them to do and you can get real creative with local dual credit. That last session was pretty informative about, and he called it articulated credit. We call it local dual credit. And essentially what you can do is if for any dual credit class, if a post-secondary institution approves an instructor to teach it, they don't need to have a teaching license. They only have to be approved through the post-secondary part. So, for example, if Southwest Tennessee Community College, who just has a private pilot's license program, if they were to take our standard level courses and approve them for local dual credit, well then we would just need to find somebody who they would approve to teach it, and now that person doesn't have to be licensed. So you can get real creative with local dual credit, and that's kind of what we have to do. Another way local dual credit is created is for dual enrollment, you have to meet the university's entrance requirements. Some students can't do that, but can do the work. And so if you enroll them in local dual credit as opposed to dual enrollment, they can get in the class without having to be a dually enrolled student. So there's a lot of workarounds with local dual credit, but specifically with an instructor, that's kind of what we're looking at having to do, because nobody wants to go back to school. So, and what's interesting too is the state of Tennessee is investing a lot of money in CTE. This grant that we're using to fund aviation was competitive, but it's been so successful for the districts that have done it, like Cumberland and like other districts that have done other things with that money. They've replicated it for this year. For the next 4 years, the governor's invested $500 million in CTE, which essentially equates to $1 million per high school and $500,000 per middle schools to do something innovative over the next 4 years, and many of them are probably going to do this. Yeah.
My program currently is stopped, right? That's so part of that's because of the perceived. They're going to put my kid in an airplane all over themselves. How'd you get buy-in at the school board level or parent level to say, all right, trust me guys, you know? And a lot of times parents aren't really the issue sometimes, but most of the times the school board and things like that. How'd your board buy into go back? Yeah, we're going to let our students go tool around an airplane by themselves.
Yeah.
How is it done?
So we have a really supportive school board. That's an easy answer, but they are very supportive of district staff and school staff, and they trust what our decision is as long as we're following policy. So for the work-based learning application, there's a lot of things that they have to check and meet before they can enroll in the work-based learning class, which means they wouldn't otherwise be able to do the flight hours. Also, keep in mind, the group that's doing this now had already started their private pilot's license journey, so we really haven't encountered this problem yet. But it's we're kind of taking a break from the work-based learning for flight next year. We're going to get this cohort through, and then we're going to start fresh. And I think just clear communication from the get-go, what it's going to be, and the application process, the ground school written exam, all of that should prep them pretty well for what's to be expected when they get to the point of accessing the flight hours. So that's a good question.
I have every parent that let their kids do it.
Oh yeah, I have parents. Well, there's every once in a while.
I don't know
there's
that
a parent
one,
that won't. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, next question.
So my question is also about, I guess, the role of the teachers and all of this. So for the teachers, you said your teachers aren't from the aviation industry, they don't have.
The middle school
Middle school.
teachers are not from the aviation.
What about for your high school? Is it the same?
Yes. So current instructor for our standard level courses is a former FedEx pilot, military background, retired. But he is not a licensed Tennessee educator. So he's on a waiver right now teaching that class. If he were returning next year, he would have to enroll in a program and go through the 4 courses that are required by the Tennessee Department of Ed. But he is a trained aviation teacher. He has an aviation background.
So for the teachers then, they're teaching this ALK curriculum and helping.
He's the only one right now.
So is that what he's doing, is teaching how to use the simulator?
Yep, well, he's incorporating the simulators into the curriculum where it's appropriate. So really what Badron talked about, taking the concepts of the curriculum and applying them in a real world setting, that's what they're doing on the simulators. And to be honest with you, with the AOPA curriculum, and that's what's interesting about Redbird is there's no curriculum that says use the simulators here. So we're having to get creative. Our teachers are having to get creative on when and where that happens, which I think them talking about a curriculum piece is really going to be helpful on how to implement it in a curriculum, because that's kind of where the struggle has been, especially for somebody who's not a trained teacher. You know, they're saying, and military background, our current instructor is saying, okay, it says I have to do this within 47 minutes, and it has to be this lesson. So it's really hard to tell them, like, it's not a state test. You have some flexibility, so. Yeah, and again, they're not trained educators, so they don't know any different.
Right. So I can't do that. I'm from the Navy.
Right.
So we're still trying to figure out.
Yeah.
everything, like, you know, all the aviation side.
Yep.
And trying to figure out how to teach,
Mhm.
learn simulators.
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, it's a skill. It's, you know, I used to be not a big proponent of people having to go back to school that wanted to come in from industry and teach CT classes, but after this experience, I see a need for it. Because it is not, I mean, it's something that we all went to school for years to figure out how to do it effectively. And we still even do it effectively every day. So, yeah, let me get this question then.
Well, not really a question, just kind of just because I'm in the same boat as Air Force. They hired me, never, other than instructing the airplane, I've never instructed in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So the districts, because they need CT teachers and they want that related experience, they've come up with their own
Training
kind of
program.
LEA training program to give us those.
And we're working on that too as well.
So that's been really successful. I've been working through that. It's been very helpful.
I'd like to-
How to teach.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe get your information
We're on the
afterwards.
opposite, and we're begging, can we please become certified?
Yeah.
Can we go through the program? Because we are on the opposite. I can teach it,
Yeah, we're looking
but
for
I know what I'm
a uniform.
teaching.
Just a comment. If anybody's using the AOPA curriculum, Redbird's created a supplement to both the 9th and 10th grade courses thus far that will essentially outline different scenarios where you can plug in the sims at different points in the lessons. So that's something we have available already. I don't know if you guys knew that.
I did not know that.
So we can forward that on to you guys. That's not a problem. And then anybody like career institutes north and south, I know you guys mentioned first year teachers. We have a professional development program that Redbird offers that kind of you guys experience with Greg coming out on site,
Okay.
where we can come out, train you guys, show you guys how to use the equipment, allow you guys to gain some confidence in using that.
And that's,
So that-
that's valuable, big time. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Two more.
Okay.
How is the middle school structured? Is it just something that all students take?
It's elective.
Okay.
So, like-
It's an elective. A couple years ago, everybody took STEM for 5 days. It's not the case right now. Some of the students will take it for 2 days a week. Some will take it for 3, and some will take it for 5. So, depending on which one you're in, probably how much
And the drug, y'all don't have 5 days still. There are 3 or 2 days. Because it's offset with another elective, could be PE, choir, band. Yeah.
Actually, fight honor. STEM fights. You're talking 5 days fights with especially honors choir, band honors art, honors.
Yeah, so not every kid is getting that. But what another thing that we've seen is those that have had access in 8th grade, coming into 9th grade, you know, our teachers can obviously tell the difference coming onto the sims and have used them in 8th grade. It's a lot less of a learning curve. And it helps out new teachers like yourself when you have that as well. But the middle school piece has been really good.
So, for teachers or maintenance, with Texas, I think there's going to get a master.
Right.
Every team. Is there any thought to push the state to recognize these teachers and get some specific certifications for
When you say specific, you talking about teaching credentials?
Like, so we're on district accreditation.
Right.
So the district gave us special permission to teach it.
Right.
They're telling us that it could last forever, it might last 2 years. There's no, for somebody who I get an online teacher, I need to know what's going to happen.
Right.
So I'm fighting trying to figure out what certification to do.
Yeah.
And there's a trade-in, but nobody knows how. And so I'm trying to work with the state, of course the state government doesn't respond either.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious to see the state, especially for Russell smaller schools.
Right.
Let's start doing these.
Yeah. So there is a lot of, I don't know how much legislation is still on the table, but there's been more legislation passed in the Tennessee General Assembly this year than ever before, is what I was told in a recent meeting a couple weeks ago. There's been a lot of talk about changing the licensure structure because of this problem. But that's up to, you know, obviously legislators and them following through with that. But yeah, there's There's gonna have to be something that happens because just like with every industry, everybody's having problems hiring everybody. That includes just math teachers, let alone CTE. So there's gonna have to be, something's gonna have to give in the next couple of years. If you're gonna invest this type of money in CTE as a state, you're gonna have to also invest in changing policies to make it easier for teachers to come into the classroom. So I know that our local state reps are working on that from our district. But I would not be surprised to see some change to it in the next year or so. And honestly, we need a little bit of a change. I do like the idea of the LEAs taking on some additional training, but there's going to have to be some sort of give on that. All right, any other questions? All right, thank everybody for your attention. I'll stick around.